No. Anyway, we're going to call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bob?
Here.
Cindy?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Here.
Eric?
He's excused. Is that the total roll?
Kurt?
Here.
Thank you.
Just for all the assembly members' knowledge that if you're going to be absent from a meeting, it'd be nice to either get a hold of the borough clerk or the mayor or whoever's going to be running the meeting ahead of time so we know if we have a quorum for one thing, and then technically you need to ask to be excused, but we'll just start using that protocol now.
I'll send out a little email reminder about that tomorrow.
Thank you. Now it's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two flavors this time.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes, and we need a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes from the 2nd of May. Is there a motion to do so?
I move.
Second. Okay. Any changes to the meeting minutes there? Okay. All those in favor say aye of leaving them like they are.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Those meetings stand as written. Next item on the agenda is amendment and approval of the meeting agenda this evening. Is there any amendments that anyone would like to make to the meeting? Kurt.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put under discussion item the opt-out option.
Okay, so that will be 16B.
Vote on that?
Okay, any other amendments to tonight's meeting agenda? Or is that it? Okay, all those in favor of going forward with the meeting agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public hearings. Before we get started on these public hearings, I'd like to just explain what's happening. There's going to be 3 ordinances that are going to move forward for this marijuana regulations if it doesn't get voted by the Assembly to put it on the ballot. And what we'll do is we'll hold off on the second reading of the 2016-06. This is the marijuana regulation. And then also for the fines, we'll hold them all till they go through the third reading, and also the Smoke-Free Act. If we get, we'll wait so they all go through the same meeting have the third reading at the same meeting, whenever that may be. So, with that being said, that opens the public hearing. First public hearing is for ordinance 2016-06, and that's an ordinance adding marijuana regulations to Chapter 6.04, alcoholic beverages and marijuana. Is there anyone that would like to speak under the public hearing? If you do, come forward, state your name and who you represent. How many people are interested in participating, just so we have a show of hands in these public hearings? Okay, so we don't have to really limit the time too much. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Gary Morgan, and I'm the person who's applying for a limited marijuana cultivation license located out at Pappy's Landing. I've submitted a letter to the council that has previously been read at an earlier meeting, but I'd like the opportunity to again state my opinion and add some information that might not have been considered. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. First of all, I think that we can all agree that marijuana is presently on the island and likely has been for longer than I've been alive. It has not been taxed. There has been no oversight to keep it out of the hands of minors, and at least a portion of these profits have likely made their way to drug cartels, drug smugglers, and these profits have been used to bring more dangerous drugs to market. In addition to this, the United States holds more of its citizens, both in raw numbers and by percentage of the population, of any developed country in the world. The FBI in 2014 reported that 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal record. my opinion that marijuana prohibition has proven to be one of the most costly and ineffective laws ever. Alcohol prohibition was a failure too. Today, if alcohol were still illegal, there's a good chance one or many of us might be behind bars. Should we opt out? Continue the status quo black market system? Continue to cling to a belief that prohibition will work if we just give it more time? I say no. One last thing I'd like to share with those listening tonight is some interesting figures. I get this information from a market analysis that was conducted in 2014 for Alaskan voters. It is estimated that there are 10.25% of Alaskans who use cannabis monthly, or 72,426 residents. The average daily use among these monthly users is 0.67 grams per day. That means 1,733 ounces are consumed daily, or 51,991 ounces each month. To put that in perspective, at a market value of $390 per ounce, that is equal to $20,276,490 each month. State tax revenue from that would be $50 an ounce, or $2,599,550 each month, or $31,194,000 yearly. This is potential revenue for the state that has previously gone to the black market. This is based on the belief that only 10% of the population uses marijuana on a monthly basis. This also isn't including residents who use it less frequently or potential tourism sales. What if that 10% is a very low estimate? Today, the state of Washington just announced that marijuana sales just reached $1 billion. Oregon's first month of recreational marijuana sales in January topped $24 million. That was the projected sales for the entire year. Petersburg has an opportunity to welcome the new industry, one that will create good paying jobs for locals and more tax revenue for the borough. I would recommend that the borough consider some additional local taxation. As a resident, I'd like to see the borough earn some new tax revenue. We have plenty of items we'd like to support but don't have funding for. If the borough were to encourage marijuana businesses, I think the gains for the community and their overall public opinion might become a very positive one. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Gary, for your input there. So,
Have any questions?
anybody have any questions of Gary? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I was just thinking, Gary, hey, Gary, did you send that to us on an email? Or could you do that for us? Is some of the numbers?
I will send it to you.
Thank you. Send it to everybody here. So
Send it
we
to
have-
the assembly,
Yeah,
please.
to the assembly, or to Debbie. Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Anybody else want to be involved in the public hearing?
I believe I will. Excuse me, Mark. He was asking, am I still going to be reading what I have?
Well, not if he testifies.
I can read it.
I have
all right.
it if you want to read
Yeah,
it, Brian.
But sure how you want to do this. Okay. Good evening. My name is Brian Lynch. I urge you to reject the placing the opt-out provision for retail cannabis sales in Petersburg on the local ballot. While the opt-out provision was included in ballot measure 2, and you do have the legal authority to do so, I don't believe it is appropriate for you to do so. Local officials should not interfere with the decisions made by the state's and Petersburg voters. This would be a situation where it's legal, but it's not right. A vote on whether or not to opt out should be left to a grassroots effort, not an effort by borough officials. Our state legislature did their utmost to thwart the wishes of the voters. You shouldn't follow suit. Besides, it's really a day late and a dollar short because there has already been considerable permitting effort and expense by local entrepreneurs and the borough staff to develop local regulations. And the placing excuse me, and placing this on the ballot does have a monetary cost to the borough. I also question the idea of placing this on the ballot simply because one assembly member had 6 people tell him that they voted in favor of legalization but didn't want legal local sales. That's from Petersburg Pilot on May 12th. I don't know what the actual motivation would be for voting that way. Ignorance, maybe they didn't read the voters pamphlet. Naivete, they didn't understand what would be allowed. Or they didn't want the stigma of a pot store in town, but apparently they have no concern about bars and alcohol sales. Or do they have some other motivation? And I'll leave that one up to your imaginations. Whatever the reason, this will do very little to curb pot sales in Petersburg, and it will simply perpetuate illegal sales and result excuse me, in lost revenue for entrepreneurs and the borough. The police will continue the need to spend unnecessary time and expense investigating local illegal sales, while most of the state will significantly reduce that effort and expense. It will also run counter to one of the reasons for legalization, and one of the reasons I voted for it, to get the sales and money out of the hands of the dealers, i.e. the bad guys. However, if you do decide to place the cannabis sale opt-out provision on the ballot, I want to request that you also put an opt-out provision for alcohol sale on the ballot as well. Alcohol is a much more dangerous drug that is definitely a health, legal, and social problem that costs the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars annually, and drunk drivers still kill around 10,000 people per year on our highways. If your motivation is to protect Petersburg, it makes much more sense to ban alcohol sales. That being said, neither ban would really affect me because I'll still be able to get both commodities on the black market. Thank you for the consideration of my request. I can feel people listening to that thing about alcohol sales are throwing their shoes at me right now. My biggest concern here is not even really the sale of that or non-sale of that commodity. It has more to do with policy and procedures. How far does the borough bend over backwards to satisfy the concerns of people who maybe didn't think they voted the right way, or they have concerns now? I mean, it's a year and a half after we voted on this. If somebody was really concerned about the opt-out provision, it should have been done a long time ago, basically right after the vote was taken. It wasn't done, and now they're coming back after effort has already has gone forth on this, on the sales. And also, there was a comment on Borough Business today about disbanding of the marijuana committee. Now, Assemblymember Greger can maybe elaborate on this a little bit. I don't believe that the committee was actually disbanded, but even if it was, and the comment was made from Assemblymember Wohlhuter that the public process ended right there. It's not really true. You don't need a committee for the public process to work. There are processes that can be used, that could have been used to put that opt-out provision on the ballot. It wasn't done. So that idea that the disbanding of that committee, if it was done so, is really a moot point. It really did not stop or prevent public participation in there. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to testify.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions of Brian? Okay, doesn't look like it, Brian. Thank you. Anybody else want to testify under the public hearing? Sue? And this is just the public hearing on ordinance 2016-06. We'll have a separate hearing after this is over on 2016-07, the fines for marijuana violations. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Wood. I'm here tonight representing myself. I recently read and highly recommend the book Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs by Johann Hari. It details America's war on drugs, its creation, and why it's failing despite continued billions of directed U.S. taxpayer dollars. Last November, I cast my yes vote for Alaska's ballot measure 2, an act to tax and regulate the production, sale, and use of marijuana in Alaska. The Alaska Dispatch reported on November 4, 2014, that ballot measure 2, an initiative legalizing recreational marijuana in Alaska, and won by about 52% in favor. Locally, I think it was about 58%. The 2015 Yes campaign contended that ballot measure 2 would begin to eliminate the black market and prevent people from being arrested for possession or using a substance many argue is objectively safer than alcohol. Petersburg already has regulations for the legal sale of alcohol and tobacco products. Let's move Petersburg forward with regulations supporting the taxation, regulation, production, sale, and use of marijuana within the borough, and I guess Service Area 1, aiding the actions and decision-making efforts of our local law enforcement and legal system. And thank you for this opportunity to express my views.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any questions of Suzanne? Thank you. Anybody else want to participate in the public hearing on this ordinance?
My name is Sherry Wohlheater, and I'm just representing myself. And I'm just going to state briefly that no matter what side of the fence you are on this issue, I think it would be really fair to see it go on the ballot. I think there are a lot of people that may have voted to legalize it and want to decriminalize it, but they may have a different perspective on how it's handled in our town, if they want to see it sold or whatever. And there are a lot of people out there that are too shy or too quiet or don't want to butt heads with their neighbors that don't quite speak up, that would like the opportunity to vote on that opt-out. It's not whether or not you want it legal or not legal. It's how it's going to be reflected and handled in our community of Petersburg. And I think that's something that is nice to have, that the state gave each community. So I would like you to consider putting it on the ballot and giving the community as a whole the opportunity to step up and place a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Any questions of Sherry's? Probably not, but thought I'd ask. Anybody else want to testify under public hearings on this ordinance?
Sorry, I'm so slow, it comes with age. My name is Mike Tolson, resident, live at 109 Dolphin. I find myself here really upset. Whoever the powers to be are that are pushing this have not learned one thing from history. Not one. Look what happened in Prohibition. Outlawed it. What happened to the crime rate? Shot through the skies. Okay? You think it won't happen with marijuana? It will in a New York second. I'm a cancer patient and I use marijuana. And frankly, I'm getting tired of having to hide it. But in talking to the individual that I get mine from, they're going to quit handling it altogether once the stores get in, the retail stores. By the time they get it, there won't be that much profit left in it. It's a matter of dollars and cents. I don't like people comparing marijuana to alcohol. People have all been around long enough. I rode the ambulance long enough. I've seen more alcohol deaths, overdoses if you want to call it, drunk, unable to take care of themselves, let alone their families. I've seen what happened when an alcoholic parent, both men and women, that have beat the total tar out of their kids.
Hey, Mike, could you, excuse me for a minute, could you just keep the conversation to the wanting or not wanting the marijuana regulations as ordinance? I mean,
I was just trying to lay some groundwork of why I don't want this. Maybe I've already done that, I don't know. But you know, one time I was a respected citizen in this town. My address has become pretty much off limits, I guess. I don't get people coming around and asking me things that they used to. I've had one contact, just one, on this proposal. I'm not going to use the language that that person used on the phone. You can use your own imagination. Extremely upset. And for basically the same reason. This person's a cancer patient. Yes, they buy their marijuana in town. Yes, they buy it illegally in town. The only places we can go and get it, we can't bring it back legally. Go to Anchorage and I can buy it. No help, no buck, no nothing. The marijuana card don't mean nothing. It really doesn't. So I wish you people would sit back and think before resolutions like this or the ordinances would come before you. You don't have to agree with the product or its use. You really don't. I don't agree with alcohol. I'm a drunk. I've been sober since July 4th, 1980. I'm telling you right now, marijuana is not as bad as alcohol. That's why I don't want to see it just go through. Question?
Any questions of Mr. Tolson?
I have one.
Kurt?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm the one that brought this forward. So, don't blame the rest of these people.
Why not? They're sitting there.
Yeah, well, but I mean, I think their opinions differ than mine. I respect their opinions, but their opinions differ than mine. So if you could have municipal marijuana, you wouldn't have a problem with that?
Municipal marijuana, you mean by that?
Like
the municipality having the store?
Well, if you could get a green card and you could buy it, through the medical dispensary, you wouldn't have a problem with?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, so, but you would still allow the use of it recreationally?
As far as recreational, never was into it much. I won't say I never used it recreationally, but that was years ago. That's when I was using a lot of things recreationally.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
But right now, you're looking at a big chunk of tax money if you let these stores go in. Every time we turn around, we hear the council talk about how broke they are, how they can't afford to pay for this, how your golden goose down here called the harbor, it lays a golden egg and produces so much income, has to go to the city council to get more money.
I think we might be getting off the
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just
here a little bit. It's a public hearing on the.
I apologize. It just.
But
I'll try not to.
thank you for coming and testifying. Mike.
Thank you.
Public input is good.
Thank you, Mike.
Go ahead, young lady. You're prettier than I am.
Very much. I'm Susie Borough. Everybody knows me. I'm the one who's applied for the retail marijuana license downtown. There's a lot of different avenues. I didn't type up something, so I'm not, I'll follow, but I did send every one of you guys a letter. I hope that everybody got it. And I did also send the facts about a lot of 27 good facts about marijuana, just, so everybody could just get some idea. Like Mike here, there's a lot of people in this town that are hurting. I'm not just saying for medicinal marijuana, though. There's a lot of people that aren't allowed, they don't get a prescription for marijuana, they don't get a prescription for painkillers. We all have to figure out some other way to alleviate our pain. I don't smoke pot.
Never have. But I do take CBD oils for my pain. Okay, so I'm just saying where I'm at. 58% of the people did vote us to make it legal here in Petersburg in Alaska. My figures, like I said in my thing, they were hypothetical because I couldn't find any facts on how many voters there were that year. So we were saying there was 1,160 people voted it in. 6 people are saying now that they did vote it in, but they're not sure that they want to have a retail store in here. That's 1%, whatever. There's like the gentleman there, back there with the grow operation, we've already invested thousands of dollars in what we're already doing. This is something that should have been decided before the application for these things came out in February, in my opinion. We had a marijuana committee. It started in March of last year. It disbanded in January. That's 9 months. They had a lot of time there to do something, and it wasn't done. And now they want us to opt out. They want to put this on the ballot to opt out. I just don't think that's fair to anybody, whether it's the person who's wanting to get the prescription marijuana or the person who wants to have recreational marijuana. I also am in the fact I'm a drinker, but I would rather see people smoking marijuana than I would drinking because I know the violence and everything that it creates. It's, you know what I mean, and the damage that it does to our body. So I'm not going to go on and on and on. You guys got my letter. You know how I feel, and I'm not for the opt-out at all. Right? Thank you very much, you guys.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
No, I'll just add a point of clarification. Mr. Lynch had mentioned before about the potential disbanding of the pot committee. For the record, and we've talked about it before, the committee was not disbanded. It was a suggestion I had made, but we had never followed through on it, and that's where it stood.
Yeah, it was just something, that was the way it was printed in the paper, I think, because I reread it, went back over that paper, and that's how they worded it in there, is that it was disbanded. So, yeah, that's
suggestion
I was
made,
just
but we
following
followed through
the
on it.
newspaper itself.
So, clarification.
And that would have been probably my misunderstanding that it was disbanded, but we just.
Yeah, I know. Jay and I talked earlier. It's just the way that it was written, not you.
Yeah.
That way back.
So I might have said it.
In January, when they actually, you know, when you guys did this, whatever it was written that way in the newspaper, disbanded. So that's just the wording that I used from the paper. So, all right. Anything else? All right. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification, because I'm sensing some, I'm not going to say confusion, but understanding issues. If the borough opted out of the marijuana state statute, what you're saying is you're opting out of licensed facilities. You cannot opt out of the legalization. That is done at a state level.
Right.
So just for the audience benefit, that's done. That's a state level decision.
Right, so we're just discussing how we want to allow it to take place in Petersburg.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification, though. Anyone else want to participate in the public hearing for ordinance 2016-06? Okay. Please come forward and state your name, and we all know you, but it's just so the people that are listening can know who's talking.
Hi, I'm Sherry Weekon. And first of all, I'd like to thank Kurt for bringing this issue of marijuana being sold in town to us, because that's nothing that I ever thought of happening, and I've seen too much of it in Washington State and Colorado, where everywhere you drive you see these green crosses, and I just don't care for the symbol and what it stands for. I really believe that, I'm not saying necessarily to opt out, but I am saying that I don't think that, I personally do not want to see it in our town area. I just don't feel that it's a good thing to do. And years ago, I've got a question for you also, but a statement here. We were talking about this the other day, that years ago there were many, many liquor stores in Petersburg. And since then, there's a number of licenses that are issued for liquor sales. And I bring that up because I'm going to ask, is that something that you have considered as far as marijuana sales? If it were to go in downtown, can we have 10 different marijuana green signs in downtown Petersburg? Is there a limit?
Well, the state ordinance or state statute that gives you a distance is 500 feet from schools, churches, and I don't know all the details of it. So that is will eliminate a lot of downtown. I think the one person that's applied for the permit might be the only place, if I'm not mistaken,
That is correct.
that can.
How about even within the borough? I
You
mean,
have a comment? Excuse me, Sherry.
May I? Sure.
yes.
The state puts no limits on the number of facilities. The ordinance that the Assembly currently has follows
State.
that lead. The Assembly could amend that amend that ordinance if you chose to limit the number by facility type, if you chose to do that.
Okay, thanks for the clarification again.
And that's what I would like to see happen. I don't want to have 10 or 20. I know that Colorado at one point was talking about a mile-long street where they sold marijuana. And I don't want to see that happen to Petersburg. And I'd also like comparisons as to what other towns that are small and comparable to size in Petersburg, even if they're not in Alaska, that have legalization of marijuana, how it's going for them, you know, and are they unlimited? Can they have as many shops as they want? Another thing, too, is that the odor of marijuana is very offensive to me. I don't like it. And I am really worried that if we do have this in downtown, there's been word on the street that there's going to be a smoking room. How's that going to affect my walk through Petersburg? Are there going to be ventilation so that we don't have to be offended by that odor as we walk through the town? And also, what type of tax do you guys have? Do you have it planned for what you're doing for taxes on marijuana? Is there anything set right at this point?
I believe it's just, would be the city sales, borough sales tax at this point. But
There's nothing additional like cigarette tax or anything like that?
not on the ordinance to my knowledge.
And what about, just as comparison, is alcohol taxed differently at all, or is that just a straight 6%?
What is the alcohol tax, Steve? Is that, the borough just gets 6%, right? And then the state gets the alcohol
Correct.
tax?
Okay, I just wasn't sure. I just didn't know how you were planning on doing that. You know, there was a remark made in the paper about the cost that it would cost to put this on the ballot. I think that it is far beyond 7 people making that decision. I think that the people in the community, like Sherry said, should be able to decide how they want this to happen. Do you want the visual in your downtown area? Would you rather have it outside of downtown area? Or would you rather opt out, whatever? I just think that we need to have that decision-making for us. I just don't think it's something that you guys should do on your own. That's my own personal opinion. And I think that, you know, if we were to vote on this, I think that it would be really nice to have more information on it. I've been told that all the marijuana information is on the city website, website. And I got on that thing and I wanted to make a comment about it, but the only way you can comment is to personally email somebody. You can't, and then there's a questionnaire thing that you can't even fill out. I think it's kind of awkward the way it is on the website. If you want to see see anything, you have to literally print it out, I guess. But I think that it should be easily accessible to us. And I think people need to know about it, too. I did not know about it until it was brought to my attention the other day. And as far as the committee goes, I think you guys should have gotten some people that had some thoughts both ways on it and had some discussions with those people. I don't know how it was advertised or what, but I don't know. I just think that there should have been more opportunity for people to speak up. You have any questions?
Questions of Sherry?
No, but I did want to clarify, there were 19 people on the committee, and they represented all perspectives, so there was a broad representation of pro and con and places in between.
So what came out of it? I mean, was there any...
Jay can give you a better...
Can you give me a more specific question, Sherry?
Well, I just want to know what type of information was... I mean, did you guys come with any proposals to put towards the council, or... I mean, what... Excuse me, assembly. That's really awkward for me.
I mean, I was looking up some of the the minutes from some of those meetings today for, I guess, more context. At the first meeting, March 25th, 2015, there was 15 people in attendance at that meeting, and we opened the meeting kind of, who are you, what do you represent, and what would you like to see? You know, kind of a general, so we all get to know this random group of people that'll be working on this together. The thing that was unanimous with that was, of the 15 there, none of them had spoke of wanting to opt out. The general, many, I'd say a full spectrum of ideas of how in between there, none of them were if. There was how do we make this work in the community of Petersburg, given that the state of Alaska and Petersburg, more so than the state, voted yes. Many of the people who were at that had voted no on legalizing commercial marijuana. I'd say that was I don't remember the exact portion, but I don't know, more than a few. And they were not in the opt-out camp at that point either. In terms of recommendations for the Assembly, that was one of the problems we had with the committee is, I think, my own personal opinion is maybe a smaller committee would have been a better play. We had anywhere between 9 and, I forgot the exact numbers over the course of that, but we had about that many different ideas of how to go about doing it. So there were no formal recommendations to the Assembly, except for reducing the distance from 500 feet from schools, churches, etc., to 250. That was something the committee passed. That was, I guess, the only formal recommendation that we sent to the Assembly, to answer your question more succinctly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I just think that, maybe you got a 58% vote of people in favor of it, but how it's implemented, I think it's important to let the community have a say in that too. And that's why I say take it to a vote. I don't know the right questions to ask on a vote, on a ballot, but I would definitely be happy to serve on something to do that because, I'm saying that I'd like to see that happen, and so if I'm going to say that, then I guess I'd be willing to serve on something that would help with it. I'm a problem solver. I don't want to just say, don't do this. I want to say, I'm not for it, but let's at least have a discussion on how we can make this good for our community.
Right, and actually, I guess I knew I had a feeling this was going to be a controversial issue at some point, and that's why right after the state, voted to make it legal, and then the opportunities were there for, smoke shops and retail sales, we formed this committee, but we're actually going to have 2 public hearings on this. The next time we address this, it'll be another public hearing when we have the second reading for this ordinance, and that would be a perfect time for people in the community, if they had an opinion on what they'd like to see, like hours of business. Like, we've got 14 letters, I think, that are going to be read into the record, too, on this issue. People couldn't make the meeting, but they emailed in their thoughts. So, and that, the ordinance can be amended, modified however the Assembly sees fit, if there's enough public input. Right now, we're just going to make it simple. The way I saw it happen was to mirror the alcohol ordinance and follow that. That's how this ordinance came before us. So I was hoping for more direction and some more public input from the committee that we formed as well, but that didn't happen. So now we're at this place in the process.
Right. Well, I think more community awareness is necessary. Kurt, your article in the newspaper, was helped open my eyes to the situation, and I think that we need to keep that line of communication open to the public and let them know what's happening, because it's a huge deal.
Well, there's public opinion messages can be broadcast on the radio, and a person could put their letters to the editor. Excuse me, got a little bit of cold. However you feel about it, and that I'm sure will influence our decision. But regardless of what we do, it's still going to be legal in the state, whether we have a marijuana shop downtown or not, is the borough's decision.
I 100% understand that. I just think it's how we implement it in our town.
Okay.
That's all.
So, yeah, if have people send us their thoughts.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, I just would like to say that every meeting of the Marijuana Committee, Advisory Committee, was properly advertised. It was open to the public. I'm not sure exactly what more we can do than the regular process of saying we have this meeting and please come and join us. So I just wanted to say it wasn't a closed meeting ever at all.
Right, we had it as a discussion item on every agenda for
Yes, we
quite
have.
some time.
Yes.
So,
Okay, here's my thing. I'm not always getting a newspaper. And the second thing is I don't always listen to the radio. So
it is on our website. I mean,
I don't look at your website. Okay, so
should we do?
So put it in our utility bill.
I think we should move on with the public hearing.
That's my own opinion.
Last time we put something in the utility bill, we got in trouble for a different issue I'm not going to bring up. We're not talking about that really. So anyway, anyone else want to talk on this public hearing for ordinance 2016-06?
My name's Tom Marsh. I find it interesting that there's so many people that are really pushing for the marijuana dispensaries. And every one of them that we've heard today has said it's not as bad as. Not as bad as. Every one of them is telling us that it's bad. Every one of them has said that they know it's bad. And as a community, we're making a decision to distribute something that every person who is pro-marijuana has just said, not as bad as. Why do we want bad things in our community? I don't think we do. And I would support having it go to a vote. You know, anyone who says that the public shouldn't speak up, shouldn't speak up. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Looks like there's more people. Harvey, there's one person before you, and then after that, please.
Hi there, I'm Michael Mullen. Before I moved to Petersburg, about 2 years ago, I heard of Petersburg's drug problem. And I came here and I heard, oh, we've got such a bad drug problem. There's drugs everywhere. Watch out for Petersburg. And I thought, oh man, well, and I noticed that it's not a whole lot different from anywhere else. And I just want to say that smoking pot for me was a gateway to other things. And I eventually became a meth addict. So people would say, well, you know, like Tom said, it's not as bad as, or it's, you know, it's bad, but it's not as bad as. It is bad. It opened a door for me to try something else. And I think if we say, yes, let's have a dispensary, what it does is it sends a message that that it's okay now because it's legal, and we're supporting it. So maybe you wouldn't have tried it as when it was illegal, but you can try it now. And so I think we should really take into consideration our children and, you know, perhaps grandchildren in this community. What does the message send to them? And do we want to give them an open door to potentially do meth? Now you'd say, well, Michael, you're an extreme case. You know, you did this or that, and, you know, I can't tell a grown-up that they can't smoke pot because, again, they can do what they want. But if we tell kids that it's okay, let's pretend like my case happens with 10% of our students, 30 kids in Petersburg, right? If my case happens with 10% of them, 30 kids could potentially be addicted to meth because we say it's okay to smoke pot. You say, well, that's still a really big number. Let's shrink the number down to 1%. 3 kids in Petersburg. Let's say 3 kids smoke pot. There's an open door for them to try mushrooms, to try LSD, to move on down the line, and eventually become addicted to heroin or meth. Right? So we know that's a problem here. And now put yourself in that position. I don't have any kids, but I'm putting myself in the position of someone who does, because I really, really, really care about the children in this community. I don't want to see them exposed to that potential addiction. So if it was your kid or your grandkid, would you want them to be exposed to that? And so that's just where I'm coming from, is that this place of, do we present this as okay for our children? And so I don't know what the answer is. I can't tell grown-ups not to smoke pot. I can't say, but I think that if we're saying, here's our place of buying weed, we're telling kids that it's okay. And, there's going to be many arguments against me that say, well, we've already got all these kids that smoke pot, but we're saying that it's okay if we send that message. That's it.
Your testimony. Anybody have any questions of Mike?
Yeah, what is your last name?
Mullen, Mullen.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Did you have a question, Nancy? You just wanted
No,
the name?
I just,
All right.
for my
Thanks, Mike.
notes.
Anyone else want to testify in this public hearing? Harvey? That's right, short-term memory. Yeah.
I'm Harvey Gilliland, and I'm sorry I don't have a prepared thing, and maybe I'll just muddle along here, but I've got a lot of thoughts rambling around in my head. Maybe they'll come out when I need them to, but I know that the people of the state voted to approve sale of marijuana, and that people in Petersburg voted something like 58% in favor of that, and I think that's kind of a fine margin. It isn't a very big percentage of people for it. There's almost as many people against it. But anyway, it was approved, and so now then it seems to me like the chickens have come to roost. There's more important. It's more important seeming to Petersburg than it might have been before, because that was kind of obscure. And I really think it'd be worthwhile to have a vote of the town on it. It might be that 80% of the town would say, let's have marijuana sales in Petersburg. Maybe it'll be less, I don't know, but it could go either way. And so I don't see what harm there would be in having have the people vote on it. And so far as word getting out to people between now and the election time, it would be on people's minds a lot more. They'd be a lot more apt to consider all the ramifications of the things that have been brought up today, and maybe others. And so there'd be time to address all the issues. And so, like Sherry Weekon said, maybe a lot of folks haven't picked up on what's going on or what could happen. And now, happily, I haven't been addicted to marijuana, but I have had an addiction in the past, and that was really hard to quit. And now Tom Marsh spoke about children. No, Mike Mullen. What made me get rid of that addiction after I tried to quit a lot of times was to carry my son around and realize, how am I going to be able to impress this lad, someday with what I'm doing is not so good. That put me off of it. And so, anyway, addictions are hard to get off of, I know. And so I do think it'd be worthwhile to have the town vote on that issue. So.
Okay, thanks for your input, Harvey. If you're done, any questions of Harvey before he steps down? Thanks, Harvey. I'll quit asking, just keep coming up if you want to testify.
My name is Richard Burke. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Committee, but it's unrelated to this. I'm a federal employee, so I can't smoke, but I was one of the 58% that did vote for it, and I think that we should have legal pot sales in this town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ross Nanik III, and I personally think we don't need to put this as another ballot measure. We've already voted on it. It's a done deal. We've had plenty of committee meetings, and I heard some people talking about how it's bad for you. The government is finally admitting it's good for you. It's got anti-cancer properties. It's not addictive. I don't use. I used to when I was younger, but I don't use. I had no problem quitting. And as far as smelling it on the street, well, and the children, well, we've got Mayfest coming up. And how many beer gardens are we going to have downtown now? You know, so where's the concern about the children for all those alcohol on the street that's going to be during Mayfest and 4th of July? So I speak against any ballot measure because I'm one of the 58% that voted to legalize it.
Thank you, Ross. Any questions? No. Thank you. Is there anyone left in the audience that would like to testify? Well, we're trying to, it's been an hour we've been doing this, so.
I was told that I had to have the proper petition, and I didn't know that. So I just wanted
Can you come to the mic, introduce yourself again, and what?
Can I give this anyway? I did a petition on my own but I didn't know you had to have a proper form, but I would still like to be able to give you guys the names so that.
Can you give it to the borough clerk and she'll make sure we get it? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Share it.
Okay, any other public comment or on the public hearing for ordinance 2016-06? Okay, seeing none, the public hearing for ordinance 2016-06 is
Mark, did you want me?
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. Here goes the next hour. You're a quick reader, right?
I'll do my best. Can I sit here and do it since I have a microphone?
We'll be able to hear you, I'm sure.
Okay. This is an email from Liz Bacon. To the Borough Assembly, I respectfully request the citizens of the Borough of Petersburg be given an opportunity to have a say by vote whether to opt in or out of the sale of marijuana in the borough. I am in favor of transparency. Everyone needs to weigh the benefits and opportunities these businesses could bring against the potential for negative impact on our community. The majority of our residents may not realize communities can opt out. The committee meetings did not have enough participation or feedback from community members. Information was basically one way, meetings recorded and reported by the press with little interaction from the public. My concern is voters may be under the impression the state ballot in the fall was a done deal. Even though a majority of residents voted in favor of legalization of marijuana, the opportunity exists between now and the fall election for our residents and neighbors to consider all our options for Petersburg. Thank you for all the good work you do for our community. Liz Bacon. These are in no order, just so you guys know. This is a letter from Rick Fish to the Assembly. The issues before the Assembly regarding marijuana are important to the future of our community. Recreational home use, marijuana marts, and toking smoking bars all seem possible as a result of the passage of Measure 2 in 2014. While 58% of those Petersburgers voting in 2014 supported the measure, they only represent 23% of the total voting public, as so many stayed home that year. The ballot title and summary were complex, and the issues being dealt with today are even more so. Retail shops adjacent to Main Street and social smoking dens in the heart of town were not easily inferred from the idea of recreational marijuana. Closet users being able to quietly enjoy their mail-order Mary Jane without the fear of a SWAT team busting in the door is far different from cloudy rooms of enthusiastic revelers grooving to Donovan and Mellow Yellow as you pass through our commercial area. Smokers of one product are requesting permission to light up inside their salons, while smokers of another are strictly prohibited in their saloons. That seems to be a gross inconsistency. Councilman Woolheater's proposal to refer to the community for clarification is just what is needed. The extent to which the options for the recreational marijuana initiative are implemented in Petersburg will set the tone for the whole town. Rick Fish. Okay, and this is from Jill Williams. To the Petersburg Borough Assembly, I won't be at the meeting tonight, but I would like to state my opinion on the marijuana issue. I feel that having a pot shop in our town would be detrimental to our community. Adding another negative substance is a bad idea. It will affect us all in one way or another. I am especially concerned about the edible marijuana. The pot industry is really pushing infused candy, baked goods, and drinks, and it could very easily get into the hands of our youth. Smoking weed is a health issue also. I am for medical marijuana and against recreational marijuana. Thank you to the Borough Assembly members for letting the town folks speak on this issue. Joe Williams. And this is from Rick Dormer. Borough Assembly members. The escalating discussion regarding the possibility of allowing a marijuana dispensary to operate within the Borough of Petersburg is of concern to me. While I respect the will of the people to legalize marijuana in Petersburg, my concern is the magnitude of deciding where the dispensary will be allowed to operate. Previously, I was a member of the Marijuana Advisory Committee and chaired the zoning subcommittee. During our short time, I was proud of the discussions we had and felt the advisory committee as a whole was an excellent representation of the many voices in Petersburg. Personally, I have great respect for Assembly Member Stanton Greger and hold no ill feelings toward his decision to disband our committee. This upcoming decision to allow a marijuana dispensary and determine its location, however, is too big for a few people to decide. I recommend utilizing the advisory committee again or putting this decision on the ballot in the fall to accurately ascertain the will of our community. Thank you all for your service to our community and for granting me the time to communicate my feelings. Rick Dormer. I have an email from Bill Tremblay that really is just his take on the questions that we have had on the website and asked the public to send input on. He says, first, there is no reason to have another vote regarding the sale of marijuana within the borough. Almost 60% of Petersburg's population approved it to be legal, and without a retail store, the sale would continue through the illegal transport and sales without regulation. Regarding the council questions on the borough website, number one, I don't support a separate license beyond what is already required to hold a valid business license in Petersburg already. Number two, I don't support the use of borough property to support a marijuana business. A business should be able to find their own location for their commercial venture. Number three, at this time, I do not support the consumption of marijuana at the point of sale. There are several reasons for this. How will workers be protected from secondhand smoke? Our current smoking ordinance doesn't allow it. How will workers be able to know if the client hasn't already been drinking? Require a breathalyzer test after 8 p.m.? How will the business be ventilated? I know we joke that the odor from the canneries smells like money to our community, but are we willing to say the same to a constant smell of pot downtown? How will the consumers be separated when smoking? As the sale will be for personal consumption and not a party pack, a business would have to define separate spaces for each client. Question number four, the borough must set the hours of operation for this kind of business. Some reasons may include, but are not limited to, sales of marijuana should not be the same as they are for alcohol. Consumption won't be in a social environment. Unlike with where alcohol is served, you can assume that if consumption is allowed, that everybody leaving the establishment is impaired. I would have concerns with the safety of people leaving a business located down an alley, as is currently proposed, especially at night. I suggest business hours for sale would be from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. in the fall and winter, extended to 8 p.m. in the spring and summer. Number five, yes, there should be a limited number of permits for all aspects of the 4 commercial operations. Juneau did some research on the number of businesses they thought they could accommodate. Our situation is different, but it might be a start. Number 6, yes, the borough should regulate the locations of these businesses, something the planning and zoning folks should address. Bill Tremblay. Okay, and this is from Dan McMahon. Regarding the recent pilot article mentioning a possible public future vote on whether or not we should allow its retail presence in our community, I respectfully submit that we already voted on making it legal in town, and we should not spend another nickel voting on any aspect of this again. Please move forward instead of backwards. This is not an age of prohibition. I am not in line to cultivate or sell any product. I have no financial stake in this other than as a normal taxpayer. Please keep any ordinances simple and in line with whatever has worked for alcohol products, but above all, don't bring it back up for a vote. Dan McMahon. This is from Robin and Jim Roberts. Dear Petersburg Assembly members, we are unable to attend this evening's assembly meeting, but we want to submit some comments about 2 issues, and we respectfully request that this letter be read aloud at tonight's meeting when those issues are raised for discussion. Topic 1, modifying the regulations regarding smoking in commercial or public buildings. We understand that a future marijuana business in town plans to have an indoor smoking area where product that is purchased can be smoked on the premises, and that in order to allow this, the town needs to modify the current ban on smoking in commercial or public buildings. We strongly object to any change in our current clean air regulations. Smoking is smoking regardless of the product. If the town were to relax the rules to allow indoor smoking areas for marijuana, then what's to stop bars and other businesses requesting permission to allow tobacco smoking? There are good reasons the clean air rules were established in the first place, and those reasons remain valid regardless of the product. Topic 2, Assemblymember Wohlhuter's proposal to put the question of opting out of allowing marijuana businesses in Petersburg on the October ballot. We strongly support Assemblymember Wohlhuter's proposal to allow the people of Petersburg to vote on whether or not to opt out of allowing marijuana businesses in our town. There is a huge distinction between supporting a statewide mandate to decriminalize marijuana and allowing it to be openly sold in our town for recreational use. It's reasonable and proper to ask the residents of Petersburg whether we want our children walking past a marijuana business every day. It's reasonable to ask the residents if they want to facilitate marijuana tourism, where visitors come here to purchase and consume marijuana instead of watching our wonderful children performing traditional Norwegian dances, learning about the fishing industry with a dock walking tour, or hiking through the muskeg, or looking for whales. We wish to thank all the assembly members for their excellent service to our town, and we thank you for reading our comments. Robin and Jim Roberts. And this is a comment from Barb Fish. To the members of the Petersburg Assembly, I would like to reiterate the comments Robin and Jim Roberts have made below. Oh, she copied their comments. They said it so well, and I also request that this letter be read aloud at the meeting tonight. I am unable to attend. I have no problem with the legality of marijuana in the state of Alaska, but I do have reservations about opening a marijuana smoking area on Nordic in the middle of the downtown shopping area. If a smoking room is allowed, that would open indoor smoking to pipes, cigarettes, cigars, and joints. Thank you for your consideration, Barb Fish. And this is from Katie Yeckley, who is the Tobacco Prevention and Control Grant Coordinator for the Petersburg Indian Association. She says it's good afternoon, Deborah. She sent it to me, but it is to the Assembly. I am unable to attend the Assembly meeting this evening, and I would like my concerns to be heard. I strongly oppose the allowance for marijuana consumption under the marijuana retail license by amending the current smoke-free ordinance of 2010. The definition of smoking means inhaling, exhaling, burning, or carrying any lighted or heated cigar, cigarette, or pipe, or any other lighted or heated tobacco or plant product intended for inhalation in any manner or in any form. Smoking, including marijuana, as it is a plant product intended for inhalation, is currently prohibited in enclosed public places to which the public is invited or in which the public is permitted. Smoke is smoke. Public health, along with citizens of Alaska, has already fought long and hard to prevent indoor smoking and exposure to secondhand smoke. There is no reason to think that marijuana secondhand smoke is safer or healthier than secondhand tobacco smoke. There should not be legal discrimination between different kinds of secondhand smoke. Secondhand aerosol is not safe for people to be exposed to. Allowing indoor consumption of marijuana will put tremendous pressure on current, well-established, clean indoor air laws. It is well established that there is no ventilation system in existence to remove dangerous tobacco smoke particles from the air to make it safe to breathe. Also, marijuana is so odoriferous. How will these establishments be ventilated so as not to be a nuisance to the general public? Everyone deserves the right to breathe clean air where we live, work, and play. Thank you, Katie Yeckley. This is from William Earl and Shannon Midkiff to the Petersburg Borough Assembly. Some thoughts concerning the cultivation and sale of marijuana in our borough. We do not feel that the cultivation and sale of marijuana and its products is in the best interest of our community. We would like for the local voters to have the opportunity to make this decision. We feel that opting out would be the best option. Our resources could be put to better use than monitoring the cultivation and sale of marijuana and its use at a retail location. We prefer that there be no retail sale within the borough and certainly not within the downtown area. The borough should definitely not allow a marijuana facility on its property. We have a drug problem in our city, and marijuana is an entrance drug to drugs that are more harmful. Marijuana itself has been shown to impair judgment and driving ability. As adults, we need to set a good example for our youth. And from Ann Rinda. I would like to ask also that the town be allowed to vote on this issue. Thank you. Sincerely, Ann Rinda. Thank you.
Thanks. You were quick, quick on that. So, all right, that closes the public hearing on ordinance 2016-06, unless someone new has come into the room that would like to speak to it. Seeing no hands go up, we'll move on to, that public hearing is closed. We'll move on to public hearing for ordinance 2016-07. That's an ordinance adding fines for marijuana violations to Chapter 1.16, General Penalty and Interest. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to testify under that public hearing? Okay, seeing no interest, that public hearing is closed. That brings us to bid awards. And the only subject under that item on the agenda is Public Safety Communication System Upgrade Proposal Award Recommendation. I would entertain a motion to award that bid.
So move.
Second. Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lagodakis to approve this expenditure. Chief Swihart, excuse me, is seeking authorization to award the Public Safety Communications System Upgrade Project to Procom Alaska for an amount not to exceed $446,377, which is less than the initial project estimate of $594,000. A Homeland Security grant in the amount of $149,000 will be applied to the project. So, is there any other comments? Assembly? No? Kelly, do you have anything to add, or it looks like it's pretty? Thanks, Steve.
It was pretty straightforward, Mr. Mayor. We received two qualified proposals, one from Procom and one from ArcticCom.
Excuse me. Could you stand to the podium, please?
Sorry, Kelly.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
We received two qualified proposals, one from ArcticCom and one from Procom Alaska, put together a selection committee of stakeholders and ranked the two proposals on 4 different categories, and it was overwhelmingly decided that the committee would recommend Procom for this project. The specifications on the equipment that we requested the proposal on meet all current federal narrowbanding mandates and are capable of being upgraded and updated to the next round of mandates that are expected to come down in the next few years. Also, on the Windows 10 thing, we were able to check with them. It looks like we're going to be getting the equipment, and both vendors were speccing out Motorola-based equipment, but the equipment will be purchased after the next updates come out and will be Windows 10 compatible.
Great, thank you. Any questions of the chief?
Just a question. There where you say the $149,000 from Homeland Security, I assume that's part of the 446?
The $149,000 was a grant from Homeland Security that will be applied to that total balance of $446,332.
So it'll reduce it to actually be $300,000 after that or thereabouts?
Ish.
Yes. And then it was originally planned for the 594 versus 446. Will the rest of that money then go into the building fund, or how is that going to be handled?
Well, and Steve may weigh in on this too, but that 594 was just an initial project estimate, so it wasn't money that was already determined to be used on the project. It was more or less a placeholder. We believe it's going to cost up to this amount. So it certainly could be redirected. It would be up to...
Go ahead.
Up to you guys and the manager to make that decision.
Yeah. It's budgeted for 594, so you just saw a whole bunch of savings, is to cut to the chase. That money is in the project budget, cannot be used unless reallocated by the assembly when we get that far. So, I mean, for example, we haven't purchased or ordered a dais for you guys yet. That would be money that would be available for that kind of a purchase.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the chief? Okay, thanks, Kelly. Any other discussion on this bid award? Clerk, please call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, the bid award passes unanimously. Now we're on to visitors' views related to today's agenda. Is there anybody in the audience with views related to today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to visitors' views unrelated to the agenda. And I think we have at least one person that wants to say something.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly, my name is Brian Lynch, and hopefully what I'm presenting now is a little bit more pleasant than the last issue we were dealing with here. As you, I think, all know, and the Mayor brought this up under at the Borough Business today, that our congressional delegation sent a letter to Secretary of State Kerry to request more federal involvement and possible IJC reference for the Canadian transboundary mine issues. And I just wanted to thank the Borough, both the present members, past members, for your support and effort, particularly the Mayor and the Vice Mayor's efforts in getting this word out. And I think it was a very significant part of convincing our delegation to contact Secretary Kerry to put this forth. And it's one battle won. The war, pardon my vernacular, the war's not over. There's still a lot that needs to go on, and the Mayor mentioned the acid drainage on the Tulsaquah, and the Taku that has not been corrected for, it's been going on for 50 years. So that still needs to be done. But one thing I wanted to bring up here too, that the Auditor General of British Columbia on this May, not too long, about a week ago, presented an audit of compliance and enforcement of the mining sector in BC. And this is where they say the war is not over. But this was really interesting. I want to read some parts of this. We conducted this audit to determine whether the regulatory compliance and enforcement activities of the Ministry of Energy and Mines and the Ministry of Environment pertaining to mining are protecting the province from significant environmental risk. We found almost every one of our expectations for a robust compliance and enforcement program within the Ministry of Energy and Mines and the Ministry of the Environment were not met. We found major gaps in resources, planning, and tools, As a result, monitoring and inspections of mines were inadequate to ensure mine operations complied with requirements. So we're still in the midst of dealing with a province that really doesn't seem to care much about what happens with mining in there. Hopefully that auditor's report will do something to correct that. But it's kind of like a lot of us that have been working on this issue for about the past 2.5 years kind of want to say, well, we told you so. And this kind of proves it. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for your...
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for all the work you're doing there.
Appreciate it,
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Okay, any other visitors in the audience with views unrelated to items on today's agenda? Uh-oh. Here comes our attorney.
Don't worry. Yeah, I'm Jim Brennan. Just want to introduce myself to those of you that I haven't met. I've met most of you, but my wife and I are going to be in town for the next week for the first couple of days of Mayfest. I've been spending the prior week down here working on my boat out in John Murgis's yard in the hot sunshine. I don't remember Petersburg being this hot, but but I just want to say hello. And I promised Steve that the meter would not be running unless you guys ask me some questions. So don't ask me any questions. See you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, is there any other visitors in the audience with, okay. Still on views unrelated to agenda items, so.
I believe this will be an easy topic. I'm Richard Burke. Saturday, the weather was amazing. Petersburg's an amazing town, and I was just thinking, I need to run down the hardware store, and it would be really awesome if I could legally get on my ATV and just drive down the street. I'd like to see at least some relaxing of the laws on ATV use. Something like require driver's license, whatever. Other towns in the southeast and the rest of the state have it. The tourists love it. I think Petersburg should be the next place.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, any other visitors in the audience with views unrelated to items on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is board, commission, and committee reports, and we have a report from the Southeast Conference Committee. That would be our borough clerk, I believe.
Well, actually, I was gone and Mindy put the report together. Help me find it, Mindy. Thank you so much. All right. So the theme of the Southeast Conference is Making Waves, Bold Strategies for a Sustainable Future. The next committee meeting date is set for Tuesday, May 24th at 10 a.m. Committee members are myself, Deborah Thompson, Mindy Swihart, Liz Cabrera, Donnie Hayes, Sally Dwyer, Marilyn Minishmucci, and Mara Lutomsky. Liz Cabrera had been working on food and venues, which is basically a Southeast Conference. They handle setting all of that up themselves, so we supplied them with a list of caterers in town and who the bars are in town that could supply a no-host bar, that kind of thing, for what they set up. Lodging is, people are to check with petersburg.org for lodging for hotels and B&Bs. The venues, the meeting space is going to be in the community gym. Reserved for annual meeting September 15th through the 22nd to accommodate setup and takedown, and Donnie is taking care of all of that, Donnie Hayes. Annual board meeting, library conference room on September 20th is reserved. Tara Alcock, our librarian, has made sure that's the case. The community reception will be held at the Sons of Norway Hall. It's reserved for September 18th. And the banquet and auction, we believe, is also going to be at the Sons of Norway Hall. So we are seeking sponsors for the participant bags and working with Southeast Conference on the layout of the facilities for the conference events. We don't have that information yet. I need to get kind of prices of what the bags will cost and what the cost of imprinting on the bags are, and then one of us, probably me, will call and see if we can find some sponsors for those bags. Marilyn Minishmucci is the point of contact for arranging lodging. She has contacted all the local hotels and B&Bs, and after these are full, she will be handling overflow at the bunkhouse, and I assume that's the PFI bunkhouse. Sally Dwyer reports that she's collected all of the boots for centerpieces and gifts. We're having the Muskeg Molieres Rose Mall some extra tufts, some used extra tufts that we're going to put some flowers in just for centerpieces. They'll be cute. Mindy and I are collecting gifts for baskets and bags. I am in the process of ordering the bags themselves, and we're hoping to get pads of paper and pens with the Petersburg Borough logo to go in, because it seems like those are always needed at conferences. Donnie Hayes is working on Wi-Fi and sound system equipment. He's installed the Wi-Fi and set up the internet. He's working on getting an increase of bandwidth and figuring out how to have a separate private network and a guest network. Donnie and Liz Cabrera also figured out how to use the big blow-up screen for presentation use during the conference. And that's our report. We're working on it. We're getting there.
Sounds like we're making headway.
We are.
Any discussion from the assembly members or questions of Debbie? Sounds like you're moving along.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for all the work. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. There's no items listed under that. Report of other officers is next. There's a basic report, very short. We're seeking letters of interest. The borough is seeking letters of interest from the borough residents willing to serve on the hospital board. There's one vacant seat, and that's until the October 2016 municipal election. So if you're interested, just mail it to Box 329 or send an email to Debbie Thompson at petersburgak.gov. So that's it. Steve, time for the manager's report?
Yes, sir. Abatement has begun on our building project. That's the first step of the municipal building, is basically getting rid of the asbestos and lead paint throughout that building. And again, this is all outside of the police station. We'll come back to abatement after we move the police later. But got a new curb in front of the building, has been poured and put in thanks to Power and Light for getting some underground conduit put in place prior to the concrete pour that we will then use down the road. So we tried to take advantage of having the road uncovered. Fortunate thing, I guess, or fortunate in a way, thanks to the jail staff and Kelly's staff, we had an attempted suicide in the jail on April 30th that was prevented by the staff. So shout out to them for their great work in saving someone's life. We saw some interesting statistics in the police department. Total cases in, fiscal year 16 through February were just over 3,200. In 15, for the same period, it was about 2,850. So, unfortunately, an increase. Arrests in the same period were 48. In 15, they were 26. And the other side of that is jail days were down for the same periods, 343 versus 407, as the state continues to want to find ways to keep people out of jail in a sense, or put them on parole. Annual transient vessel traffic in the harbor has increased the last couple of weeks. Cruise ships are maintaining about the same schedule and number of stops over the past few years at 92 stops in Petersburg. I want to thank the harbor staff. They spent some time with the National Marines Fishery Protected Resource Officer Sadie Wright last week concerning sea lion deterrence. They're kind of going around getting ideas on how different communities are handling keeping them at bay. They really liked our electric fence and mannequin approach, so maybe we'll start a trend in Southeast. Reminder from the harbor, as of May 1st, the Harbor Department has started enforcing posted parking time limits in the harbor parking lots. Please make sure you follow the posted time limits, and any questions can be answered at the harbor office. Also, annual launch permits are due June 1st. Pick up and pay for your 16-17 permits at the harbor office. Southeast Conference is actually about ready to sign an MOU with the state to develop a proposed strategic plan to include a long-term, comprehensive operational and business plan for the Alaska Marine Highway System. Southeast Conference will be seeking funding to undertake the work. Big thanks to Dave Kinzinger for his continuing efforts to move this project forward. Again, that's basically trying to show the state as a whole the value of the Marine Highway System and a plan for trying to fund it going forward that keeps it all running. Children's Center was awarded a grant for $24,500 from the Rasmussen Foundation for the expansion project. One of the big keys to the community receiving that money was the demonstrated community-wide support that was instrumental to them getting that. Rasmussen likes to see communities supporting their own and are willing to throw money at it when you do that, and we definitely did that. Just thank you to all of the folks involved in that and the community as a whole who donated and made this possible. The RFP for design and engineering services at Scow Bay closed on May 6th. PEDC received 2 proposals. The board will be reviewing those with a goal to make a decision at the end of May. This again would be the design for what we want to eventually do at Scow Bay, and that will be coming forward shortly. The market is entering its second season under its Farmers Market Promotion Program grant. They have scheduled 4 markets at the A&B Hall and 2 evening events at the Sons of Norway Hall for this summer. So keep an eye out for the schedules, and please frequent them when they have their events. The Fire Department organized and practiced a mock car crash on May 12th for the high school students to emphasize the importance of safe driving, particularly focusing on no texting, no drunk driving. There was a mock car crash with injuries. They showed the Taylor White documentary, and the police department and Petersburg Mental Health gave presentations at the school assembly. Additional thanks to Public Works and the sanitation staff for setting up and removing the cars, trying to make this real for the kids, to realize the importance of not doing some of those things. They can cause serious accidents. 2017 budget was adopted at the last assembly meeting and will be available on the borough's website. I think it already is. Thank you. Utility bills and harbor mortgage bills can now be paid over the phone 24/7 by using a new interactive voice response, or IVR. It is listed as a phone option when you call our regular number, 4425 number, or you can call it directly at 1-877-885-7968. And again, you can pay your harbor and utility bills using the computer system. We're also trying to make a big push for customers to sign up for email-only utility statements to save on the cost of the monthly mailing. If utility or harbor customers are interested in this, they can sign up online or call the finance department for assistance and for signing up for this feature. Customers are also able to sign up to receive an email notification when a payment has been made to their account. It's a nice feature for those people on auto pay. So we, again, trying to find ways that cut a little bit of expense and save people getting extra paper. Public Works completed an upgrade to Joa Street water main and the sewer main in preparation for the paving of 8th Street. The crew will be moving on to complete upgrades to sewer mains on Fram and Excel Streets and some culvert work at Lake and Valkyrie Streets prior to the paving of 8th Street. Seacon, and this is weather dependent and everything else that they're doing, may actually be able to perform some of the paving on Borough Streets end of May or early June. So we're trying to keep Public Works on top of the prep work in case Seacon can get onto our projects earlier than expected. Despite all of that, again, Public Works helped move us up here, and thanks to them for helping Parks and Rec erect the food court for Mayfest. Definitely appreciated, as well as Hammer and Weekon for allowing us to use that lot for our Mayfest activities. Borough has hired Jeffrey Davison, a state-certified wastewater operator from Wrangell. Sorry about that, Wrangell. But it was one of our open positions. Mr. Davison started work with the Borough, starts work on May 31st. We've also hired Sam Hoshar for the motor pool. He started on May 16th. Both of these are replacement positions for open positions. The annual household hazardous waste collection event will be held June 4th and 5th this year. All residents can bring up old paint, stain solvents, oils, antifreeze, cleaners, etc. to the baler on these days for free disposal. Commercial businesses can contact Carson Dorn and Juneau for acceptance of commercial waste during the event. We'll be putting out more information as we get closer to the event. Sanitation is working with the Chamber of Commerce for collection and consolidation of trash during the Little Norway Festival. Again, thanks to the Chamber and Sanitation for helping to keep the community clean during all of the festivities. Reed Brothers is making great progress on the landscaping at the library. Work will continue through June, getting the hardscape and then the landscaping in place. The library is planning the Summer Reading Challenge. This program will begin June 6th. And Parks and Rec is, among other things, preparing for the Mayfest activities, including working on the Lope the Loop 7K. So if you're interested in those, please talk to our friends at Parks and Rec. Congratulations to Chris Allen in Parks, and who has accepted the move to a facility specialist, and to Bridget Davidson, who will be our new front desk attendant. Again, thanks to Wrangell, and both filling vacant open spots. Evidently, we're very popular among Wrangell people who would like to live in Petersburg. We will, on the Parks and Rec front, we will be bringing 2 candidates for the Parks and Rec director to town early next week for a series of events, including a community social from 6 to 7 on Tuesday night, tomorrow night. They'll get a tour of the facilities, and then a final interview with me on Wednesday morning. And then we hope to have a decision made by the end of the week. So encourage everyone to come out to the community social tomorrow night and meet the new candidates, and hopefully one of them is the right fit for us. And really the last thing, it's not on my report, but if you didn't know it, this is Donnie Hayes' last assembly meeting. So we will definitely be sorry to see him go, and miss his presence at the meetings and everywhere else. That's it on my report.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Any questions of the manager on his report? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Unfinished business. There's ordinance for second reading. That's ordinance 2016-07. That's an ordinance adding fines for the marijuana violations to Chapter 116, general penalty and interest. I'll entertain a motion to adopt that ordinance.
So move.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lagadakis to adopt ordinance 2016-07 in its second reading. Once again, if this passes this reading, it'll be held off for its third reading until the 2 other marijuana ordinances, or the smoking ordinance and the marijuana ordinance come to their third reading. So any discussion on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, clerk call the roll.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2016-07 passes unanimously, 6-0 in its second reading. New business is a resolution of the Petersburg Borough setting the millage rate for the fiscal year July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. I'll entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Gregor, seconded by Member Lynn to adopt Resolution 16-12. Any discussion? Just an annual event that we do every year to adopt the millage rate. So, no discussion. Will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 16-12 passes unanimously. That brings us to item 16-115, and that's approval of Pump Station 1 and Force Main Upgrade, Phase 2, and it's change order number 1. So entertain a motion for approval of this.
So move. I'll second.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lagodakis to approve this change order. So can you explain this real quick, Chris? I hate you don't have a microphone. I know you have to get up, but just so the people in the listening audience can get an idea what it is.
Yeah, well, this change order came out of the project we're working on right now to replace the force main, that runs through the South Harbor. As part of that process, we upgraded some gravity main, and we found some gravity main. While we were replacing some of the planned sections, we found some more that was in very bad shape. So this year, we replaced that portion of gravity main, and we found some additional gravity. We had suspected that we would possibly find more line that was the big problem with it was that it didn't have enough grade, enough slope, and so that wastewater needs to run downhill, and so in order to get adequate grade on this section of Maine, we had to go further out, to a point that allowed us to increase the angle of flow. So I hope I'm explaining this well enough to you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so this change order is basically to address problems we didn't know about, but we knew were possible. So we did put some contingency funding in the project that will more than cover this change order, and we'll still have some left. We're going to be doing some pump station work, which is also underground. And that's the tough thing about these underground projects is that, you can put a camera and inspect them, but that only gives you so much information. Once you dig stuff up, then you really find out the true state. And so typically on these type of projects that are underground, we do put in more contingency funds because, there are going to be surprises.
Sounds like a good policy. So where is this really located? Is this between
This
Lumber
is between Singley Alley and Lumber Street, yeah. And we knew we replaced a portion of that last year, and we installed a new manhole, and we realized when we put the manhole in that the line coming into the manhole was at a negative grade, so it was actually going uphill. So this year we were planning to replace a section of line from that manhole, 146 feet upstream. And however, we didn't know if that would be enough, would get us enough elevation to have the right kind of grade on the pipe. And so when we dug down at 146 feet in preparation for replacing that section of line, we found that we didn't have enough grade, so we had to go all the way out to the Lumber Street manhole, essentially. So we ended up replacing the entire gravity main from Singley Alley to Lumber Street. And it didn't cost us as much money as it could have because we had, like I say, we knew this was possible, that we'd find some more bad pipe, and so we had purchased the materials ahead of time, so we didn't have a delay from the contractor to acquire materials. We didn't have to pay markup on the materials and so forth. So we did think ahead a little bit, and like I say, we had contingency funding as well set aside. So it really, even though it was not a happy surprise, we were as well prepared as we could be for that. For what we found.
Questions? Cindy?
I just wanted to make the comment that you provided in your letter to the Assembly that this work is 70% funded by an ADC grant, so it's not borough funding for the majority of it.
Right. It's being funded by ADC with 70% of it is a grant, and then 30% is an ADEC loan.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Chris, for explaining.
I think I'll stay here because the next.
You might have questions. Okay, will the clerk call the roll on the vote to approve Pump Station 1 and force main upgrade?
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, so it's been approved to move forward with that project. Good thing to do before we get the road repaved. Next item is Hagen Drive Sewer Improvements RSA Final Change Order. I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
For second?
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Gregor to approve the improvements for this change order. Chris, want to give a brief explanation?
Sure. This was another one where, originally we had put together a project because we knew there were some sewer manholes on Haugen Drive that needed some work. And so we had put together a project to do some rehab of several structures and a little bit of line replacement of, some older asbestos cement sewer line. And basically when the ground was open up, we found that things were a lot worse than what we thought. We ended up replacing twice as many, or I think more than twice as many manholes as we originally planned. And so that increased the cost significantly. We ended up replacing more sewer line than we had planned on. That increased the cost as well. And so yeah, the scope of what we were planning to do just it mushroomed on us a little bit on this project, and so that's where that number comes from.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions of Chris about this project? All right, sounds like we're going to have things up to snuff under the ground here, huh? For that part of town, anyway.
Yes.
For now.
Yeah, for
now. Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you. Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Okay, the Hagen Drive sewer improvements passes unanimously. And that brings us to a confirmation of support for the Ravens Trailhead. All we're doing here is sending a letter supporting the Forest Service so they could get funding for this. So I'd entertain a motion to send a letter.
Move. Second.
Been moved by Member Lagadakis, seconded by Member Strand. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes. Okay, communications. I have I guess the latest news is that the Lieutenant Governor isn't coming, and the Governor probably won't make it to Mayfest, which is unfortunate, but there is going to be, got an email from JKT. He's going to be here with some other legislators from the rail belt, it sounded like, or rural?
The Bush Caucus.
Yeah, so there's going to be, Senator Stebbin might try to make it. We've got the ambassador from Norway coming in on Wednesday, leaving on Saturday, I believe. He'll be around town. Kari Oss, I believe is his name. So there will be a couple of dinners for him. I think he's going to be at the Elks a couple nights and maybe a barbecue. So he will be entertained. He's going to go fishing, so hopefully he can catch a salmon. That's all the communications I have. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay, assembly discussion items, recognitions. Cindy, you have recognitions?
I have three.
Oh.
My first one is I want to I'm going to put it in a positive light, thank all the drivers who are not talking or texting while they're driving downtown. I've heard a lot of discussion about it in town and online, and thank you very much for putting your phone away when you're driving around, especially in the summer season when we're going to have more foot traffic. My second thing is I attended the Kupernoff 40th celebration this weekend. It was very well attended, I think more than they expected. They had done a very good job of signage and laying things out. They had a welcoming committee. Becky Regula, Sharon Sprague was there. I think Tom Reinertz was there for a while. And Mike Truax had created a really beautiful wooden shelter that folks were enjoying. It was a lot of fun, and the weather was perfect, and I thank them very much for inviting folks in and going to the effort of putting that on. They had a fun notebook with a lot of Kupernoff history and old newsletters that they had published, and great photos, so that was fun. And my final thing is, I very much want to thank you, Donnie, both for your work at the Borough and the assistance when I was working at the Chamber. And it's going to be hard to top your sense of humor, which I very much have appreciated. We had a discussion online about a do-it-yourself snowman that entertained, I think, quite a bit of folks. But I know you put a ton of effort into your Parks and Rec job, and your family helped out too. I saw your dad working at the boiler one day, and that's going to be hard to beat. You're going to be missed.
Any other recognitions? Bob?
Yeah, manager talked a little bit ago about the Children's Center and the grant they've got. Last weekend, they had a benefit for the building fund, and the people in the community really poured out. They collected $25 shy of $8,000 with 250 tickets sold. What that means to the community is that allows us to apply for a second Rasmussen grant now. We've got it. So that will allow, in the fall, the kitchen to be upgraded, part of the roof to be replaced, and some of the, and as you talked about earlier, you find things underground. Well, we found a few things underground that need to be fixed too. So it'll allow us, anyhow, that allows us to leverage that additional money. And thanks everybody in the community who painted the chairs. There were some really neat ideas. If you haven't looked at them, look at online at the Children's Center at the ideas that came up in painting chairs and what they've done. It's kind of neat. Anyhow, thank you. And again, Donnie, thanks for all your help and work.
Okay.
Just one specific thing for you, Mr. Hayes, of recognition. A community, like a Parks and Rec community gym, doesn't do any good, no matter how good it is, unless people are using it. During your time here, you've really done a magnificent job of increasing usership of these facilities. Can't keep people healthy and in shape if they're not using it. And I know you prioritize getting people out and using them with different programs. So thank you specifically for that piece among many. Take it easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Donnie for his efforts for the community, and he'll be missed.
Yeah, and I've said this before, Donnie. Thanks for tolerating us in the gym there, not throwing us out when you had every right to do it. And, we appreciated it, and we've actually brought home some trophies for Petersburg, to look at, even though we don't get the recognition that we thought we should be, but for old guys, we appreciate the opportunity. So Donnie will be missed for sure.
So this is just really for information, since we're all talking about how we're going to miss Donnie. We are planning a reception to say goodbye to Donnie on Friday, June 3rd from noon to 3 at Parks and Recreation. The Borough will provide meat that will be barbecued, and we are asking people to bring side dishes, salads, desserts, whatever, to go with that, and come and let Donnie know just how much we will miss him and wish him well.
So June 3rd, what time is that again?
Noon to 3.
Okay.
But we will also advertise it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any recognitions? Okay, we'll move on to item 16B. This discussion about opt-out on the ballot in October, putting that option on there to let the voters decide on the marijuana issue. Kurt, you wanted to...
I think it accomplished what we were hoping it would accomplish. I think we got a lot of people out here tonight, to give us their point of view. I think it's still going to be a tough decision for us to make without, actually, I hope more people weigh in. I knew we would always get the zealots, when it comes to these issues right off the get-go. But I would encourage everybody, regardless of what your opinion is, for or against, please let us know through an email, and make sure you email it to Debbie so she can get it all to us. Or if you know our email addresses, email it to all of us so we all are on the same page. We all have the same information. So, and just to clarify a few of the things that were mentioned tonight, it's more than 6 people now. It's almost over a dozen plus. 2 added this afternoon, but that's hard to quantify when you don't see it in an email. So that's why it's really important that, I appreciate the support and I appreciate your points of view, but let's get it to all the assembly members here, because we're the one that's probably going to ultimately have to make this decision. So thank you for those that did show up.
Yeah, public input is good, and I believe we have until, as an assembly, June 12th, or was it the 20th?
20th.
20th to decide if we're going to put it on the ballot, and if we don't.
Actually, that will need to be the first reading of an ordinance.
The first reading by June 20th.
Correct. So we are short time because the ordinance will need to be written and have its first reading at the June 20th meeting if this is the direction the assembly chooses
Right.
to go.
So I think we will have fairly good attendance, if I'm not mistaken, on the June 6th meeting. I believe Kurt and I will still be in town, not off on our fishing adventure. So,
Also, Mr. Mayor, if I could, it's a little bit convoluted in the statute as to whether or not we can, I mean, I will need attorney input on whether we can do this by, like, if we pass an ordinance in 3 readings, and can we put it on the ballot for the public to decide? I think we can, but I am going to need help on that. So that's another thing that will take some time.
okay, so we will have that information by June 6th?
Yes, if that is the direction that the assembly chooses to go.
Well, I think we need to know what our options are.
Okay.
It seems like, so, it's past the public to do an initiative thing, right? April.
It's too late
sometime.
for that, for at least for our regular, our general election.
Right, and a special election costs near $20,000,
Well.
15 to 20,000, whatever. That was an estimate, so. I would suggest since we're having another public hearing on this ordinance, the marijuana ordinance, on the 6th, I don't know, I think we could wait until the 20th, unless we want it as an action item, in case we want to vote on it on the 6th, to put it on the, or we have to draft an ordinance and have 3 readings to put it on the ballot.
Correct.
Well, how does the assembly feel? I mean, I think we could probably wait to have the first reading until the 20th. Nancy?
I think we should get it done as soon as possible. If we can have the first reading on June 6th, I think we should go for it.
And then just, Jay?
Do we know what our attendance will be for those?
I don't-
I think a fuller assembly would be
We're going to have a
ideal.
quorum on the second meeting, are we?
On the 20th.
Yeah, I'll be out of town.
What day is it?
Let's take a head count. It is a Monday, the 20th.
Yeah, okay, the 20th, yeah. I might be able to be here, because I don't think they're going to start me until probably about the 20th.
I won't be.
I'm going to start on Crabs, and I'm not going to start on Gillnet, so that would be,
Are you going to be gone, Sid?
I'll be out of
I
state.
thought you were going to be out of state, so that'll be 2 of us gone. Eric, I don't know his schedule. Were you going to be gone then as well?
I'm here.
So there's
I'm the easy one.
quorum. And if Eric's here, that'll be 5.
Okay.
So,
How about for the 6th? What do our numbers look like?
I'll be here.
I
I'm
think
here.
we have a quorum then.
I think
It's like a full show?
if Eric's here, we might. Nancy, will you be in town on the 6th, our next meeting?
Yes, I'll be in town for all of our meetings. And is it possible to do 2 readings at one meeting?
I would rather not. I know we've done it in the past, but generally the second and the third reading is what we did, so we've had a public hearing. Maybe we can't now that we're a borough.
We cannot any longer.
Okay, that was the old days.
I guess my only preference is, with an issue like this, I'd like, the more of us here, the merrier. My 2
Right,
cents.
exactly. So we should maybe,
And I can call into the meeting, I just can't run it or count
Okay.
it towards a quorum.
that's on the 20th.
Right.
Yes, yep.
So it is a little bit of an issue that in the same meeting, we're going to have the second reading of the ordinance that we have already proposed, and we're going to have the first reading of an ordinance to opt out. I kind of think you guys need to decide which way to go. Somehow. If you're asking me to go ahead and try to draft an ordinance or find out if we can, maybe that's what we need to do first. Find out if we can draft an ordinance to opt out. But if we do that, then it kind of kills the first ordinance. The ordinance is dead, the first ordinance.
If we pass that one. in the
If
first
we
reading,
decide to write an ordinance
It kind of
that,
holds the whole process up.
yeah, we can't really do both at the same time, is what I'm
We'll have
saying.
4 going to the third reading at the same time then.
Well, it doesn't make sense to have those 2 ordinances
Get
at
some
the same time.
clarification. Well, so I guess we have to decide which way we're going to go. It's
Yes.
back to the next meeting.
Like we have competing ordinances.
Yes, which doesn't make sense. The assembly needs to.
You had your hand
Well, I mean, this would just be a vote to, to allow people to decide if they want to opt out. So what if they decide not to opt out? What's the problem with having the ordinance already set up so that you could just hit the ground running?
Okay, so I guess what will happen is if you pass an ordinance to put it on the ballot for the locals to decide, the ordinance that we have going right now is going to be dead, right? I mean, because right now we're saying, yes, we can have them. Okay, so the ordinance that we're working on right now will be null and void. If the community decides to opt out, then it goes, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, then we fall to state statute. Correct?
Just for convenience.
Yeah, okay.
The ordinance you have right now, not talking about anything else that was discussed, is a local ordinance. If that fails or doesn't get passed, we will default to the state statute, which is actually in some ways more liberal than what you have in front of you. So you have an issue of and there's, by the way, and we could stop everything too. I mean, we could step back and punt. I mean, I heard a lot of things tonight about, well, maybe we just don't want it downtown, or maybe we want to limit it. I mean, you can start over again and redo the ordinance. I mean, that ordinance, that was one of our big questions. Do you want to limit permits? Do you want to use zoning? Do you want to, all of that could be done with the existing ordinance. If you truly want to go back to the voters with an opt-out, then we have to kill this ordinance, which means we default to the state statute until such time that the borough makes the decision to either opt out or not. So I know I'm being really confusing. It's, this has come about so late in the process now that we've moved down off of that in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. That's why, in my opinion, it is we just move forward with the ordinance.
And that's kind of the vote we need the assembly to tell us. Do you want to pursue that, or do you want to kill it, default to the state statute, and have, Jim Brennan start researching what it's going to take to go the other direction? And I talked to him earlier today, and he said it's complex.
Bob, you had a comment?
I do. I was about where Steve is I've heard 4 or 5 things tonight that I'd really like to have some discussion on, and besides the opt-out. That would be one option, but there's 4 or 5 other things that they talked about tonight. The number of permits, the zoning, and so on and so forth that I heard people talking about that I think this crew needs to talk about, before we decide what we want to do. If you just want to put a ballot measure, say, Petersburg opt-out on the ballot, that's one thing. But if we want to change the order, that's another. I'm in the same place. I'm confused right now where we want to go.
Here's an example. The way we drew our circles on the map were circles to say you can't be within 500 feet. The state statute doesn't do it that way. The state statute, it's walking distance from door to door. So if we default to the state statute, there's liable to be more downtown businesses that would be open to being a retail establishment. I mean, that's an example of how the state statute, if the ordinance dies, it actually could have some different ramifications than maybe some of the people that really want it to. If we don't pass an ordinance, we're going to be under the state statute. So that's the challenge. We can do that and then have the community conversation, get back to talking about it, and decide some of these things. And it may be October before we decide. But just heads up, during the meantime, you've got the state statute that becomes the law.
Is there a deadline for us to make our decision which way we're going to go?
Well, in order to have it on our ballot,
June.
There is. However, that's at regular meetings. You can set up special meetings if we can't get it all fit in what we have. I mean, there are ways to make it happen, but I just feel that the important thing is for you all to decide which direction we're going to go. In the direction with the ordinance that we have, with changes or with not, or putting it on a ballot to opt out to the people.
Well, possibly we make it as an action item on the meeting of the 6th.
I'm good with
By the
that.
assembly. Yes, please. And then, whether to put it on the ballot or not, because after that, we've got one chance, and then that would be probably a new business item. So would we even have maybe we could have the second, well, no, because you have the second public hearing and you have the second reading of the
If I may,
ordinance.
I guess I'm being cynical. I don't think there's any way the Assembly can vote on the 6th meeting and us have something ready for the 20th. Anything has to be done we have to have it vetted by the attorney. And this is not, Jim had said, this is fairly complicated. We may be trying to push this way too hard. It doesn't have to be on the next ballot. I don't want to speak for the community, but if the answer is get a group of people back together, talk through some of these, talk through it at the assembly level, whatever, and that takes another 2 or 3 months, so be it. I'm not sure that I think that's probably more important to get it right than it is to do it fast, I guess is kind of
That
what I'm
makes
saying.
sense to me. It's a conflict.
Kurt was ahead of me.
Kurt?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what you just said, Steve, that you beat me to it, but I'd just like to echo that, I've been in Petersburg for 37 years, and we haven't had a marijuana for sale in 37 years, so let's get this right. Let's don't rush into it just because, it's new, and because it's new. And I have a lot of respect for the people that were on that marijuana committee, and I respect Jay for all of his hard work in that, and this was all new ground for us to try to break, and so there is a lot of information that we need to have. And I think if we were to rush headlong into this sort of thing without getting more and getting as much information as we can before we do it, because we only have one chance to get it right, and then we have generations in which to live with if it's wrong. So I'd hate to see us untie the boat before we get the chance to get the engine started. So,
one just word of caution, though, is if we don't have an ordinance in place and you have, I think, Ms. Borough, who's got a outstanding permit, the state's liable to approve it and move forward, and the Assembly won't have a lot of say in that. I don't want to. I think it's good to be slow and to do the right thing here, and I think there's a lot of new information. But understand that may jeopardize your ability to stop if you don't want it downtown. I just don't know how that works. There's some language in that state statute that talks about if a community doesn't have its own ordinance, the state takes ownership of the process of issuing the permits. So I just don't know how that works.
Okay.
You were exactly right in regard to that. And I guess just, Kurt, a question for you is, the law passed a year and a half ago. I guess I wanted to know, what gives you the impression that we're kind of rushing headlong into this thing? I feel like it's been a pretty diligent and thorough process to this point, with asking repeatedly and consistently for public feedback, which we get a lot of. People still stop me and talk about it, but I just wanted to know what gives you the impression we're rushing at this point.
one of the things that what typically happens in Petersburg, I've been following politics a long time in Petersburg. I've been on the harbor board for I started 15 years ago because I've been here for, so I was on there for over 12 years. And you can have a really important issue, and you can think that you have given them every opportunity to speak about this issue. You can actually go to them and tell them about this issue. But the minute you pass that issue or that ordinance or whatever you're going to pass, they come at you like they had never heard of it before. And this is a marijuana issue. This is an issue that, we've had people mention how, I know we're all adults here. We all view this slightly differently. I was a kid once also, and I told my wife I wasn't going to rabbit trail, but I watched probably a lucrative career as a goaltender go down the tubes because I decided to tune in and drop out at the age of 15. I was scouted at the age of 13 by Boston University. We went to a national tournament. I made the all-national goaltender, for the all-national team, but I decided to tune in and drop out at the age of 15. Do I regret doing that? Not at the time, but now I do. But see, these are the opportunities that we present to our kids when we say it's okay. So I just don't want to see anybody else making kind of the same mistakes. We can all rationalize why we wouldn't do it ourselves. It's just that kids, I don't think, have the ability to do that. And, like I said, I've lived here for 37 years without having marijuana available to me, and I don't think this is something that we should rush into.
With all respect, though, it has been available to everybody in town
Right,
for the last 37 years.
I don't use it, however.
Yeah, I'm not trying to push
Well, that's what I'm saying.
here, but I guess I get confused right now is because, like many people have mentioned tonight, a lot of work has been put into this, like by a lot of people, many hours, like more than I would have cared to spend my life doing. Truth be told, I wasn't overly psyched to be put in charge of the committee because it is a lot of work. So I guess my follow-up to you right now would be, why go for the opt-out now? Like, why does it feel pressing that we need to get this, as an assembly, need to take on the opt-out option at this point? Instead of letting, a citizens committee field the issue.
Nancy, you had a comment?
I think what people are overlooking, as a matter of fact, I remember when marijuana came to town 53 years ago, in a busload of kids from Marin County, California, who parked it out at Sandy Beach and passed it around.
I think I knew those guys.
No, you didn't. No. You were probably about 3 years old.
Well, I think, I can't remember their names, but I remember it was over towards where your house is. Okay.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was over by Homer's cabin.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is there's been black market pot, and their kids walk by every day going to school, walk by people inside the dispensary smoking it, lurching home or not, being exposed to harder drugs, and pot it did not spring full-blown as the entry drug. Alcohol is the entry drug. So I think if you want to do away with people smoking pot, you need to start with doing away with alcohol. It's that simple. But there'll still be black market pot everywhere if we opt out.
Okay.
I just wanted clarification on the why now. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of the licensed professional counselor talking about pot and leaving that alone.
The why now? Because I guess...
If I could, thank you.
Because what typically happens in this town is nobody does anything until something is mentioned that it's going to happen. So what ended up happening was that it got out in the newspaper that her intention was to now open up a marijuana shop. Before all that time, it was like, well, it was always a potential that it could happen, and so that wasn't a big deal. Then all of a sudden, I had people come out of the woodwork and stated that they did vote for it, but they wished they hadn't if they would have realized that it now meant that we were going to have, marijuana sales in Petersburg. So that kind of got me to thinking about my grandkids. I have grandkids, 7 of them. When I had children, they all kind of got out of this town without becoming drug addicts. I mean, they probably smoked their share of pot, but they're now adults and have their own children. I don't know. I just, I'm not into prohibition. I'm not into all that stuff. But I just think if it's readily available, if we allow people to think that it's legal, so it's okay. I think it just makes it just that much more, easier to get involved in because nobody is, nobody's saying that it's taboo.
Well, regardless of what we do, like the manager mentioned earlier, it's legal in the state of Alaska. And it might even be more liberal if you use the not as the crow flies or draw the string out and do a 500-foot radius. If you have to take the streets to get there to get your 500 feet, they might be able to sell it at Hammerwick hardware store or convenience store. Not that they will. I mean, they might be within the boundaries legal set by the state. So I guess we...
Yeah, that's why I stepped away to talk to Jim, is I wanted to confirm my statement before I said that. There's nothing the Assembly can do that can make it illegal.
No.
The state has ruled on that.
No, but
so the question is, does the Petersburg then, so opting... that's my fear when I heard people talking. Do they think opting out means it's not going to be legal here? The answer is no, that has nothing to do with it. Opting out would say you don't want a licensed facility of any of the types here.
Nancy?
Opting out says you don't want to regulate it. You don't want to control it. You don't care who smokes it. They could be 18 or 12.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think we're the only, I know we're not the only local or the borough city government that's struggling with this issue around the state. So that's why it's water under the bridge, but I wish we would have been farther along 6 months ago, but we're not. So here we are.
But I think we still can add additional restrictions as far as
Amend the
smoking
ordinance.
on site or in public or consuming on site. Those are the things that I think I'm more concerned about at this point. I feel like the voters have spoken, and that's our mandate.
Well, we should ask Susie if she plans to have smoking. I don't think she's
Well, I
going to
wouldn't
do
ask,
that.
because the next person
beginning-
could
at the
offer.
beginning.
If we don't want that activity to happen, then we need to put that in place, and it applies to everybody who has a permit.
Well, I think that's another thing. Permits are going to be self-limiting, and with one dispensary, there's not going to be anybody that wants to compete. There's going to be only one commercial grow so far, and that's going to be her supplier, because she can't ship it in.
If she could get it tested.
So, plus, I learned from experience long ago that you can only please half the people, and one week it's this half, and next week it's another half. So if people start coming out of the woodwork now, wait till next week.
Yeah, well, that was my hope, I mean, if that was the way it is, but.
Well, and
yeah,
my other
yeah.
point about that is that on the pro side, people I never thought would weigh in have weighed in that they're in favor. And so I've seen both.
Yeah. I was going to say, my sidewalk polls, indicate that exactly, It's 50/50, and so that, I'm not trying to direct anybody, and tell them how they should vote, I'm just really curious as to what they think, And to me, right now, it's coming in right around 50/50, So if we're comfortable with, if you guys are comfortable with passing an ordinance that says we can allow marijuana in town, if you think that more than 50% of the people are there, that's fine. I know which way I'm going to vote, so it doesn't matter to me. However you guys want to do it. This is an assembly. You guys can all vote your conscience, so.
We need to decide how we're going to move forward from here. Jay?
I'll start it. Not afraid to go first because it's getting a little late. I was laid out that in terms of, I definitely do not support the opt-out option. The marijuana committee, for all its challenges, was very clear that it was focused on the how. We have commercial marijuana in Petersburg, not the if. 58%, as was cited earlier, of people in Petersburg voted for it. Commercial sales, not just legal, marijuana. And I don't want to be responsible at this point for usurping the vote of the people. They voted clearly, and we moved forward accordingly. I will not be supporting putting opt-out on the ballot. There's my 2 cents.
Okay, so it sounds like, I've got a question for Debbie. Are we going to have an answer back? Are we going to have a modified smoking ordinance that could be on our next agenda?
Yes, Sarah Heidemann has that now. We have asked her to add in the, what's it called? Yes, e-cigarettes, thank you, because that was another thing that the PIA, Tobacco Prevention, wanted added in. So Sarah does have the ordinance that's modified for the marijuana smoking on site, I think was the deal, and other issues, and also then the e-cigarettes. So yes, I do believe by the next meeting, we could have the modified smoke-free ordinance to you for its first reading. Is that what your question was?
Yes, so I guess we need to move that ordinance, we need to change that, or modify that ordinance to catch up with the other ones.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Bob?
As part of your question, would that also then include marijuana if there was an ordinance for marijuana? In other words, could it be used for that also?
Yes. I think that was what we sent to Sarah. Yes, please, because I haven't, I'm sorry, I was gone.
The modifications that we made to the smoking ordinance allowed a smoke room. I mean, we used language to say that was going to be allowed. Obviously, that can be changed. But
properly ventilated with certain practices.
Following state statutes, was go into great detail on what they have to do.
So we have to follow the states.
Yeah.
Well, and this pot smoking room would have the same restrictions. I don't think we need to change anything.
So, what do we want to do?
Let's put it on the next for an action item. The opting out.
Well, like
Then we don't have enough.
Debbie said if we did that, then it seems to me like we should be able to, amend the ordinance we're working with. And maybe if it's the wish of the people, they can convey their thoughts to us, we don't allow it downtown. I mean, that's unfortunate that someone's already trying to set up a business and we're not going to allow it. But this is, a pretty different type of business.
I think that's probably, we don't want to go there. I think that it's outside the even the biggest, the longest, the furthest buffer zone. And it would be even shorter. If you don't want it on Main Street, you're going to get half a block up from Main Street. So I think that we don't want to go there.
That's a good point, too.
Banning it on Main Street. We want to see where it is. So if you see someone that you know, I mean, all you have to do to say to some miscreant who's about to go step outside the line is, "Don't I know your mother?" Worked for me.
So, what are we going to do? Continue with, what's the next step? We have to have the first reading of the smoking ordinance change, right? To get it to catch up with the others.
Correct. And so that doesn't mean that the existing marijuana ordinance will be on that agenda because we need the Smoke-Free Air Act ordinance to catch up.
Right.
You could also...
We could let it catch up in the third reading. We could have another public, does this make sense? Another public hearing, second reading on the marijuana ordinance.
True.
I could see it's
Yes.
something cause here.
Maybe with some amendments or changes, if we want to.
You bet.
And we could do that also in the third reading.
Doesn't the smoking ordinance already restrict the indoor smoking to a smoking room?
It does.
And
I
so
would have to.
I can't see.
Yeah, no, I read it.
changing that.
It does. Nancy's correct, yeah.
And I can't see changing that. By the same token, if we let this go by, they're going to think they can do that with everything we're trying to pass, and we'll never get anything done.
You could also add an action item. This is completely up to you. Still have the smoke-free ordinance first reading, still have the second reading of the existing marijuana ordinance, and just as, not another ordinance, but just as an action item, vote yes or no whether you want to begin an ordinance to opt out and get it on the ballot. I mean, you guys can decide whether you even want to begin that process.
Does
that make sense?
Then if we decide to, then it kind of puts the other ones either on hold or.
Correct. And at that point, then, we can pay attorneys to do all the legal stuff that they need to do to tell me what our next steps are.
At some point, we're going to have that information anyway, correct?
Unless you decide that you're not going to put the opt-out on the ballot, then not necessarily. We're going to continue with our other ordinance and make it how we, the town, wants it.
So back to our smoking ordinance that we have in place now, it would allow a person to open up a smoke shop if they had the proper.
Yes,
room
the way it
for
reads right now, yes.
Is that restriction on that room more lenient than the state's?
Thank you, Steve.
It would be the same thing.
We didn't weigh in. We purposely said we're not qualified to define, air filters or, so it is entirely, if it meets the state statute for a marijuana smoking room, then the borough's going to say it's okay.
We're good with our current ordinance we have.
The adjustments to the smoking ordinance basically refer to smoking would be allowed in a licensed marijuana facility. With that, they can't be licensed unless they follow the state statute. So we just consistently use that language. Smoking marijuana would be allowed in a licensed marijuana facility. That's really the change, and it appears several times in the ordinance.
But that could also be changed by just saying we will not allow smoking.
Exactly. Yeah, somebody could change that and say, you change the smoke-free ordinance to say no smoking allowed, period. That ends the smoke room for marijuana. I mean, that's one of the options given by the state to communities, that you can opt out of smoke rooms.
The other, Cindy?
Let me ask one follow-on question, because I think I'm cycling back. We've had this discussion before, but just to clarify, but you could still smoke in public, is that correct?
Actually, no. The state says you're not allowed to smoke in
Okay.
public. Now,
Okay.
I'm going to be careful.
I'm just thinking it would be ironic if we said we couldn't do it in a smoke room, but then you could step outside and do it.
I'm trying to be careful, though.
Okay.
Because the state has made marijuana legal. The public consumption of marijuana will be a citation, Chief?
That's right. That's right.
You know, like littering. I mean,
Right.
so.
Okay, so
Similar
we would
to-
be covered, is all
Right.
I'm asking.
It's not going to be a crime. We're not going to be putting people in jail for that. I mean, the state has already addressed that.
It would be like open container.
There you go.
But apparently littering doesn't include cigarette butts, so that if you were so inclined, you could flip the roach on the ground.
So, how are we going to approach this? I don't have a good answer.
I'm inclined to just move forward with the smoking ordinance and leave it at that.
That's-
I'm the same place.
I'm in the same place, too. And then we could still have the second reading of the marijuana ordinance on the 6th. We'll all be here, and there'll be the second public hearing. And I'm sure after this discussion and the discussion on the radio today, we're going to have, I don't know, we might have to take turns coming into the room, pick a number or something. Maybe it'll be down to the doorway.
Well, we'll be starting at noon, so we'll have all afternoon.
Won't that
There
be
you go.
wonderful? Okay, so.
So the market, one last question here. So then, if we wanted to amend the smoking ordinance, then that would be the time to do it at the second reading? Okay. Or the third?
You can amend it, the smoking ordinance at any one of the three readings.
Okay. Okay. That might alleviate some of the fears of
But we
people,
can't
you know.
pass this in time for Donnie's party.
The room won't be open down there anyway, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never stopped anybody before.
Okay, so are we done with beating this horse? So did we make any sense what we're going to do?
Yes.
We have a plan.
As I understand it, we're going to bring the first reading of the changes that have been made to the Smoke-Free Act of 2010 for your review and the public's review. We're going to bring the current marijuana ordinance, where we've changed the alcohol ordinance to include marijuana. We're going to bring that into the second reading and have another public hearing. And of course, that can be changed as well. And that's where we're at, right? That's it? Is that correct?
Right, because we've already done the second reading on the penalties or the fines.
fines,
So that
correct.
is
So that's on hold.
toast, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the end of the discussion. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.